Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Ruggiero, Vice President of Communications for Quilts Incorporated, and we've got another great video interview with one of our Festival Judge Show winners this year. And today we've got Kestrel Michaud. Kestrel, welcome.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me today.
Great. So as you can see behind me, Kestrel's quilt, she won the Innova Master Award for Contemporary Artistry. That's a $5,000 award sponsored by Innova for her quilt, The Arrival, which measures 65 by 44 behind me. So I'm going to go ahead and read her artist statement so you can learn a little bit more about the quilt. Kestrel says, this lush tropical paradise is the scene of a monumental event. An airship from the human realm has just arrived. It carries an emissary who hopes to establish friendly diplomatic relations with the resident elves in the interest of learning about their connection to and mastery of magic. This meeting will have a resonating effect on both cultures. This is Kestrel's original design, and she used machine quilting and fused applique and digital printing on it. So, Kestrel, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Mm. So, tell us a little bit about the background and really the story behind your quilt, because a lot of your quilts have the interconnecting story.
Yes, I am slowly illustrating various scenes and stories from this imaginary steampunk world that I have in my head. And the quilt that I'm working on right now in real life is the precursor to this one behind me. It's kind of the event that inspired the humans to want to send this airship to, the elven realm to learn about magic.
So one of the things that I really liked about your quilt, and of course you were at festival and you spent a lot of time talking to people about it, is I like to take people up to quilts who aren't familiar with it and have them just go, wow, I can't believe that's a quilt. It looks like a painting. So for the kind of uninitiated, and that would include me, tell me a little bit about, the background of how you actually put it together.
And with all of my quilts, starts as a full size drawing that I do on my iPad. And then I take that drawing into Adobe Illustrator on my laptop and I add color and basically turn it into a life size applique by number pattern for myself. I send that digital file to my Cricut cutting machine, cut all of my fabrics, iron them all together. They're all backed with fusible. So I'm literally ironing my quilt top together one piece at a time. And then I quilt it on a sit down Q20.
That's and how tell me a little bit about how you did you kind of teach yourself this technique as you went along? Is it something you really kind of invented wholly out of your head?
I am a classically trained fine artist, and I do have a degree from in illustration from the Ringling College of Art and Design. So I have a very art focused background, but this process that I use to make my quilts is one that I developed myself.
Okay. Now tell me a little bit more about the story, the whole steampunk story that you have based around these quilts.
So every quilt that I'm making, every steampunk quilt that I'm making is a cherry picked story that I've thought of that all takes place in the same steampunk world. So this quilt behind me is one event in the timeline. The one I'm working on now is the event that takes place before this one behind me. I have illustrated different characters from my steampunk world. Just so far, I've not had the opportunity to make enough quilts that there is a linear story that's directly interconnected quilt to quilt. I'm kind of jumping around to the different points on the timeline that are most exciting to me at any given point in time. But eventually, years down the road, once I've had the chance to make, 20 more quilts,
I was
they
going
will
to say,
all
are we going to see a book project come out of this eventually?
someday. Yeah, but they are all interconnected and they will tell a story visually without me, right now I'm just jumping around to different points in time essentially.
Now I see the other quilt behind you also won in this year's judge show. I believe it's a Bremen Town Musicians.
That's right. Yes,
Right.
Bremen Town musicians.
So tell us a little bit about that one as well. And I'm
So
sure everyone
Bremen,
can see it. So
yeah, yeah, it's on an angle because it's adjacent to me. But Bremen Town Musicians is it's a fairy tale from the Grimm brothers book of fairy tales. And it was always my favorite fairy tale as a kid because the animals definitely get to come out on top in that one. And it was originally done for the EPM, European Patchwork Meeting, Once Upon a Thread themed competition back in 2022. And it was part of that exhibition. It toured for a year, and I got it back, and it It went to a couple shows here in the United States, but it has now sold. So I've been given permission to send it to Road to California, and then it will go to its purchaser.
Right. Now you're obviously on the younger vanguard of quilters that are coming up today, and there's always a lot of talk in the industry. How do we get young people interested in quilting? How do we get younger people involved? So, as a representative of that group, how do you think the industry can do that?
I think by appealing to the subject matter that young people are interested in. And the young people always have a very positive reaction to my quilts at any show, especially Houston, because so many people attend the International Quilt Festival. But the young people that I talked to this year at Houston were very interested in the storytelling and the fantasy of my work.
Mhm.
It's not just recreating a photograph, and it's not just, the old stereotype of your grandmother's quilt. It's new, it's different, and it's something that's very interesting to younger people. And I really think that that's the key, showing young people that quilting doesn't have to be just the stereotype that you may have grown up with it being.
Yeah. So, now, I mentioned, of course, you were in Houston and you spent a lot of time with your quilt, and I saw you had the blow ups and were showing people the whole process. Tell me a little bit about your experience and what kind of hit you most when you were actually talking to people at the show about your work.
The thing that was the most interesting for me was seeing viewers' reactions to the dimensional quality of the quilt. I actually had someone ask me if I could take my glove covered hand and run it over the front of the quilt to prove that it wasn't actually three-dimensional.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, and it looks like it's popping off the page. It looks like you could just step into it, and that's the illusion. So having that, it was very rewarding for me to hear so many people love the design, but that part in particular, the comments on why does the castle look like it's coming off the page, or why do those clouds look like they're coming off the background when they're not? It's flat. It is as flat as I can possibly make it. Like, this is a flat quilt, but it looks 3D, and that was very cool response for me to hear viewers almost getting confused, because with my background in art, in artistry, it's something that I almost take for granted of being able to do, and it's seeing the unique, the viewers' response to something that I had previously taken for granted gave me a really new appreciation for that ability.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, and I guess the last question I have is you touched a little bit on this, but tell us what you're working on now and maybe what you see for the next year or so in your artwork.
So I can share my screen and show you because I have the digital design
Oh,
done.
by all means. Hey,
Okay,
kids, it's an exclusive here.
this is coming up now. Yeah. Okay, give me 1 second to open it up.
I've got breathless anticipation here.
I gotta wait for Adobe Illustrator to open up. So I've completely finished the digital design. So, my digital template is finished. I have started picking the fabric for it. So the next step will be to
Oh,
iron all of
wow.
my fabric, treat it with the Mod Podge, and then cut all the pieces. So the story here, as I said, this is kind of the precursor to the arrival. In my fictional world, there are sometimes magical events called arcane snaps. And arcane snaps are sort of the magical equivalent of earthquakes. And just like some earthquakes, you can have a very mild tremor that doesn't, you feel it a little bit, but it doesn't do a whole lot. Or you can have very strong and destructive earthquakes. So this arcane snap is one of the mild ones. It's not really anything more than a very trippy light show, but it occurred naturally. And this boy and his dog just happened to be in the right place at the right time to see it happen. A much bigger, more destructive one happened in the middle of a human city. And that's what inspired the government to say, hey, maybe those elves were onto something with controlling magic. We should reach out to them and establish diplomatic relations. So, this is the story behind Arcane Snap. It is in progress right now, although I don't have anything physical that I can show. It's only in my computer at this point. But this one might be at Houston next year. We'll have to see.
Might be. I feel I should be listening to some Pink Floyd music or something like that. I don't
Yeah, no drugs are required to for this to happen in my steampunk world.
Well, great. Well, Kestrel, again, thank you so much for taking out the time to do this. Congratulations. We look forward to what you do next. Anything else you want to say that maybe I haven't asked?
I think we've covered it. Thank you so much for having me today, Bob. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Kestrel, and good luck on your next project.
Thank you very much.